Jagex have recently released a second blog covering run energy changes. While the changes seem small, they have a huge impact on Ironman mega scales, allowing high-scaled solos without needing to bring loads of stamina potions. The previous regen and drain rates are shown on screen, and you can see that Jagex have proposed to double the regen rate and slightly decrease the rate at which run energy drains. 2 years ago, Lord Hisoka released a brilliant 4-0 method for Ohm, which makes use of the Shadow and the Scythe to kill Ohm without taking any damage. I've linked this in the description. The new run energy changes, a couple of tweaks to Hisoka's method, and making use of 3-0 head phase now allows us to complete Ohm with a very small amount of supplies. This opens the door for solo Ironman mega scales, and allows us to reach upwards of 165,000 points per hour. This guide builds on my previous guide to 3+12s, and is intended for endgame players. We'll be stacking the pre-rooms, then doing 4-0 Ohm for every phase, and 3-0 Ohm on the head phase. You'll need a Shadow, a Scythe, and a Dragon Hunter crossbow. You'll also need a tanking ult, just like in 3+12s, plus another ult to lure mystics. It doesn't need to have any stats or gear. You'll earn a 1 in 3 chance of a purple every time you complete a raid, and I'll set out a pathway for learning all the techniques in this video. Looking at Lord Hisoka's method, which we've optimised to walk on all available ticks, we can see that we spend 13 ticks walking and 7 ticks running over an entire cycle. Before the run energy changes, this method would drain 6.26 run energy per rotation at 64 kilograms. After the update, this falls to 1.88. In addition, when you have the stamina effect, which reduces the drain rate by 70%, the method actually gains you 3.79 run energy per rotation. This is a significant change. Drinking a stamina potion gains you 20 energy right off the bat. 10 rotations of 4-0 while under the stamina effect then gains you a further 37.9 energy, and then 30 rotations while unstammed loses you 56.4. Overall, we can now do 40 rotations of 4-0 on a single stamina dose, meaning that a stamina potion now effectively lasts 32 minutes in total. If you take things a step further and flick piety like I do in this video, Vile Vigour can be used to complete Ohm without a single stamina dose until you get to the head phase. For a 1+14, this means we can complete Ohm with only a single potion, or 2 if you don't want to flick piety. The first optimization we can make is when we spawn our Thrall. Ohm won't turn towards a hand unless it's been hit within the last 4 or 8 ticks. Scythe has 3 hit splats, so it's incredibly likely to turn the head. Shadow attacks are much less accurate, so we want to use the Thrall to our advantage and have it attack the mage hand when we need it to turn. By summoning it 1 tick after we do our first Scythe, this ensures that it will hit the mage hand on the tick we want it to. This adds an extra layer of protection and makes Ohm 4 times more likely to turn when we do a Shadow hit. You can see that the Thrall attacks on the same tick as Ohm turns, and attacks the mage hand on 3 out of 5 of its attacks, which also slightly increases your DPS. Walking on the ticks we can is also really important for this method, so you'll need to get comfortable with control clicking if you're not already. I've shown on screen the moments where I'm control clicking during the cycle. The control clicks give you time to switch gear while moving, without requiring you to move tick by tick. It may take some getting used to, but it's a really useful skill in other parts of the game too, and is absolutely necessary for this method to work. The next thing we want to do is ensure the hands are balanced. Your melee DPS will be naturally higher than your mage DPS, especially if you hit good specs and a big early BGS, so the mage hand will often lag behind. We can counter this by simply swapping out our second Scythe hit with a Shadow hit, which doesn't negatively impact the cycle. This is also slightly more run efficient. This is important on all phases as we want to ensure the hands die around the same time, otherwise we can take damage dealing with one hand at a time. But it's especially important on the final phase, where resetting a hand will obviously cost you a lot of time at this scale. If the head doesn't turn, you can take a hit from Ulm, but these hits add up over time, so we want to deal with the shadow hit splashing. If you splash on the first shadow hit, simply run to the melee safe spot and start maging again. You need to be aware of when you splash, anticipate needing to run to the melee safe spot, then mage again and get back into cycle. Delay 1 tick on your scythe after doing your mage hit, so that there's 6 ticks between your shadow and your scythe rather than 5. This ensures that you stay in the cycle that you are in. If you splashed on the second shadow hit, it's exactly the same thing. The timing here is slightly tighter, since you're attacking the tick before Ohm turns. Here, you need to react to the splash on the tick afterwards, so if it's a splash, it's a good idea to preemptively run to the melee safe spot. If Ohm turns as it's intended to, then simply switch back to melee gear and scythe as normal. Otherwise, run all the way to the melee safe spot and start maging again. As before, you want to delay a tick on the scythe to ensure you stay in cycle. If you learn these 2 methods, the Ulm fight will be completely damageless other than mistakes, and I'd recommend bringing a Blood Fury while learning, just for that extra bit of security. There's a lot to practice, but there's a very natural pathway to doing it. Firstly, practice the method in its basic form on P3 during a regular Ohm. Once you're comfortable with the method and the Thrall timing, you can try doing a 1+4s. At this scale, the melee hand will never cripple, so you can practice for a longer period of time on all the phases. You'll also be getting around 140,000 points per hour at this stage, so it's already getting more points per hour than other methods. Finally, you'll progress onto 1+14s, which is what I'm doing in this video. I'd recommend taking a 4-way switch on Mage, and I'll show the setups in a second, but it just makes this method a lot more chill than doing 8 ways or 6 ways, like in the original video. This is what I take into a 1+4, and I generally aim to no prep unless I take a lot of damage in the pre-rooms. I try to avoid Vasa and Vanguards, but otherwise any room is fine. I take a 6-way on range and a 6-way on mage, and I will do 3-0 on head phase if I take a lot of damage. And this is what I take into Ohm for a 1+4. If I have a lot of bruise, I'll do head phase like normal, but as mentioned, I'll generally be doing 3-0 to avoid the need to prep. 2 staminas is plenty, and after the run changes, you should be able to do this with just 1. The 1+14 setup looks a lot like the 3+12 setup from my previous video. You'll be on Ancients to stack mobs, and then spellbook swapping to Thralls for Ohm. You're also taking much more stamina potions here. This is what I'm currently taking, but after the run energy changes go live, 2 staminas will be plenty. Going into Ohm, I currently take 3 brews and 2 restores, noting that you can equip the DHEB and Book of the Dead for an extra slot here. But I'll be taking 6 brews and 2 restores after the changes go live. As mentioned earlier, head phase can be done damagelessly with the Dragon Hunter crossbow, but this cannot be done with a T-bow. So I'd recommend downgrading if you plan to do this. The DHEB is obviously lower DPS than the T-bow, and you can only hit on 15 out of 16 ticks doing this method. But the loss in DPS is justifiable because it allows you to do head phase damagelessly and makes this whole method possible. Once you're comfortable with the method and have reduced your damage taken, there are some obvious progressions. Taking more range switches is a good candidate, and once you've done this, you can replace the BGS with a ralos. You can then use this on the melee hand after 2 mauls, as well as on the head phase, to improve your raid times. More mage switches will also be a priority, though upgrading from a 4-way to a 6-way for this method makes it slightly more click intensive and a bit less fun. I found 4-ways to be very comfortable for this method, and the only way to make it bearable. All of this combined can net you comfortably over 165,000 points per hour. I'll have a full run recorded linked in the description, which shows my point of view from the Ironman throughout a whole raid, and you can also see what the couple of vaults I have are doing in that raid as well. In that video I get close to 170,000 points per hour, which would have been easily achievable if I hadn't slightly messed up the prep. I hope the video is useful, and if you have any questions or comments at all, do let me know, and I hope this helps someone on their twisted bow grind. Thanks for watching.